So patience, something that does not come natural for someone living in the world because it's not something practiced or a really valued trait. We have to wait too long for our food and our patience disintegrates. We have to wait for something that we know is coming, but it's not here yet. Our patience still goes out the door completely. If something doesn't go our way and we think that it should be here right now, we lose our patience. But patience isn't simply just waiting for something, but it's waiting for something with joy, continuing with kindness, gentleness, and self-control, and remaining faithful to the Lord. I want you to turn to James 1. So I want to go through, it's going to be verses 2 through 4, and I want to just go through them and kind of break them down. So we often hear that people say, don't pray for patience. It's like, why? But it's because of how the Bible tells us how patience is produced. James 1, and we'll start in verse 2, says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." And I highlighted joy and various trials, and I put an arrow from joy to trials, and above that, I put rejoice in trials. And I know I talk about rejoicing in trials all the time, but I think that when you're producing patience, this is a crucial part of that, is having joy in your trials. This is the hardest thing to do, but this is crucial, because if we are not rejoicing in our trials, we're complaining, or we're asking, why is this happening? Or we're trying to figure out a way to get out of the trial instead of allowing patience to be produced. Verse 3 says, "Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience." This remains true not just for like hardships, like trials, hard things that we're getting through, but this whole group of girls, we are in the area of our life, the season of our life where we either want to find a person who is husband material or a boyfriend right now, like a relationship, or, and Ross mentioned this when I was going through this lesson, I didn't even have this here, but he was like, when I was in high school, I wanted to get out of high school, like I just wanted to start my life. And I think that each of us can fall into that category, even me. But I think that I've learned, and I'm not perfect at patience whatsoever, you can ask Bailey, but I've learned that instead of complaining or magnifying the negative feelings that surround this whole trial, or instead of questioning why you aren't in the season of life you want to be in, to rejoice in it. Instead of focusing solely on making this season, or saying, I want this season to be the season that I find the person I'm going to marry, or that I find the person that I want to be with. And although those things are not, there's nothing wrong with those things, but if those things aren't coming right now, and you have to have patience while trying to find these things, focus on the patience that's going to be produced. So let the season be a season that produces good fruit. So instead of focusing on all of the negative things, focus on the fruit that's being produced that you're going to need as a Christian throughout your entire life. So verse 4 says, verse 4, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." So I have this Defending the Faith study Bible, and under it says, "To atheists, tests and trials, pain and suffering are meaningless. But to the theist who understands that God created the world to provide the ideal environment for people to decide where they choose to spend eternity, trials make sense. They serve a purpose of maturing and perfecting the human spirit." So as Christians, trials make sense to us because they serve a purpose, but we have to allow that purpose to work. So we have to allow our minds to be open to be able to produce patience. And I think that it's really hard to do this in different seasons of our life, especially when everyone around us is maybe doing the thing that we think we should be doing right now. But I challenge you to allow patience to be produced in a season that you aren't comfortable with. We want this in our life. We want everything to be like no hills, no suffering, and eventually when we get to heaven, that's what we're going to see that, and we're going to feel that. On earth, we're not going to be comfortable. We're Christians. We're not supposed to be comfortable. And so I think that allowing the fruits of the Spirit, allowing patience to be produced in times that we're not comfortable, because being uncomfortable can sometimes lead to growth. And I think especially when it comes to patience, that uncomfortable time that you're in your life can produce so much. If we're comfortable all the time, then we may never produce that patience. We may never produce the fruits of the Spirit that we've been talking about. I like that in my version, I have New King James, but in Galatians 5, where it says the fruits of the Spirit, mine says long-suffering instead of patience. And I love that it uses that because it reminds me of Jesus. And I love using Jesus for an example for pretty much everything, because he was such a great example of it. Not that when I think of patience, I don't think of Jesus, but long-suffering is having or showing patience in spite of troubles, especially those caused by other people. When Jesus was on earth, when he was rejected by people, Jesus did not lose patience with them in the midst of his troubles or when he was rejected, but he went to God in prayer. And we always say Jesus could have called 10,000 angels, but he didn't, because he was patient with us. When we were still without strength in due time, Christ died for the ungodly. That's in Romans 5:6. And it was because he loved us. But this is one thing that I found interesting. Turn to 1 Corinthians 13. We normally use this, which it's also, I'm not like degrading this value, because I think it definitely needs to be used this way. But we often use this for like romantic sort of things, and like when you're in a relationship, or if you're trying to find a relationship, to like look for these qualities. And that's absolutely great, but this is also the love that God has for us, agape love. This is the love that God had for us, but not only that, it's the love that we're supposed to reflect to other people. I want you to notice that in verse 4, let's see. In verse 4, the first phrase that it starts off with is love either suffers long. Mine says love suffers long. But other versions say love is patient. That's a quality of love. So to be able to reflect this love that God has for us, and that God continues to have for us, we have to have patience with that. We have to have the attributes that love holds. Ephesians 4:2 says, being patient, bearing with one another. This love is not just simply saying, I love this person, but this love comes along with different things like patience. And to have that love, to show that love, we have to have patience with one another. And I know sometimes it can be so hard, depending on the person. Like sometimes you just meet people and it's just like so easy to love them. But there comes times in your life where there's people that you meet that aren't as easy to love, and that aren't as easy to show patience towards. But I challenge you to do that. And on that list that you're writing, and like I want you to keep this list for yourself, but I want you to write people that you might need to work on patience with, people that you may have not shown as much love to as you should have. I want you to, so after you've written down all of your different things that you have, I want you to write underneath it or wherever, why is it so hard for you to have patience for this thing? Why is it so hard for patience to be produced out of these trials or situations with other people? And work on it. Because patience is something you're going to need throughout your entire life, and you're going to need it as a Christian. So I want you to work on this and pray about it. Don't allow this trial or people to take away the love we are to reflect, but allow it to further your love by producing patience.